Roughly 3 weeks after all my chickens and my rooster died from the mink attack, I decided to start building a more secure house for them. The plan was a simple one. Have no gaps for mink or other bloodlusty animals to slip through, be protected from all sides by wood or similar undiggable material, and have it sit above the ground to be mostly windproof, so it would be warm enough in winter. Starting out in August, somewhat the peak of grass living to its fullest potential, I had to somehow create an even surface for me to start out on, which I did by aligning the palletwoods, which I would once again use as building material, to suppress all the growing weeds. The palletwoods by themselves would not be usable as material if I just left them untouched. There were just too many gaps in between the planks. So I embarked onto removing these gaps by taking the pallets apart and rearranging them without gaps. A task which I greatly underestimated, looking back at how much time it took to take it all apart and then rearranging them to fit. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, let's take it step by step. Taking all the planks off took a few days. I tended to leave the middle one on, as well as the outer ones which didn't have a gap between them. Mostly because those were the ones who had the most nails in them, which kept the whole integrity of the pallet together. Afterwards, there was the whole ordeal of getting all the nails out, as well as sorting them to usable and unusable nails. It cuts down significantly on your cost if you reuse old nails instead of just buying new ones. You probably shouldn't be doing this with a house that you would live in yourself, but it's good enough for an animal shed. Different pallets had different thicknesses and different widths of the planks. As of such, I had several piles of different planks which I used to painstakingly try to find the best fitting piece for re-nailing the pallet. After nailing enough of the pallets back together, I started to think long and hard about how to proceed. I wanted to use these fencing posts and stakes again, the same ones that I used for the previous house, because they would provide me with enough support for everything I had in mind. Now it was just a question of how to exactly puzzle all of it together. Instead of an external support with the pillars, I wanted to opt in for an internal one this time. Meaning exactly planning to how the walls would be arranged and then cutting holes into the bases of it all to prepare ahead. Holes having been cut and confirmed to be big enough with the stake that was going to go through it in the future, I started to connect the base, which still consisted of 4 different pallets, to one big base. This was done by using the cement blocks which I wanted to use as a base later, more on that in a minute, to even the base and to be able to connect the pieces with some wood. And thinking about how it would work once I turned it over, I also had to put some piece of wood on the other side to have it all even in the end. I now had a really big piece of screwed together pallet wood. So having to move this thing took a solid amount of effort of trying to not break my back while moving it. Not gonna lie, I've had better ideas, but I had to move it somehow. I don't quite know how solid the human spine is, but I did feel somewhat of a shock flowing through my back when I lifted this the first time. Don't worry, I'm fine. Marking the space to where the stakeholders had to be was achieved by me just ripping out grass on the cut open spots and then marking it with some alcohol based spray. Hammering down the footholders was a spectacle like always. I once again almost destroyed that thing by repeatedly hammering it and trying to push it down the last few centimeters. Enjoy me just being desperate and trying to get it down a few more millimeters, while also getting all sorts of wood stuck in there in the process. Thankfully, it was the only one that brought me trouble. The others went in without much of an issue and much less resistance. To really make this base mink-proof, however, the gaps in the middle connecting the pallets had to be covered. I tried just hammering smaller pieces of wood into the gap, but settled with just screwing another plank from the underside of it to seal the hole. Easier said than done with a construct of this size. It was a balance act for sure, but I somehow managed to do it. What was left was 16 pallets that had to be rearranged and puzzled together. Lots of sorting, lots of denailing and renailing. As I mentioned before, I wanted to have it sit above the ground, which would prevent an animal from digging through the ground and entering the house that way, as well as having the pallet wood, which I was going to use as a base, survive for much longer than being constantly exposed to water and earth. which would have slowly but surely make the wood break over the years. Enter the friend arc. A friend of mine named Jacob took it upon himself to share my shoddy house together and lend me a hand for a week. Here's us on a mountain that we trespassed onto. We accomplished a decent chunk of work, including getting this base done. I got these 9 cement blocks from my local hardware store to be used as a base to lift the house off of the ground. So after rearranging them in a neatly and orderly manner, we lifted this probably 100 kg heavy construct onto the blocks, stuck the posts onto the holders and started bolting them in. Having a cameraman is highly convenient, by the way. Lining up the walls was relatively straightforward. I also bolted them onto the base because the more security the better. Of course I also had to fill the gaps around the stakes, which I did by cutting out some wood to cover the hole up. For the animal door, we aligned the pallet to where exactly we would install it, then put it back down, marked the area where the hole would be and cut it out. Straightforward and relatively simple. For the time being though, we left the house at this stage for a while, because time was limited and we had a rough timetable. A week later, after Jacob left and I was alone again, a local friend came over and helped me with some stuff. First and foremost, getting these really heavy pallets on the already established first story. After lifting them all up, I used a lot of wood to connect the pallets together and connect the stakes to the pallets with angle brackets. Next up were the holes for the rafters. This, I assure you, was done in a highly scientific manner and not thought up on the spot. I further assure you that the methods which I used were completely safe and definitely not done on an unstable ladder coupled with a 50-meter extension cord as well as an upside down held jigsaw. I recently learned that some younger folks watch my videos, so I feel the need to say this. Kids, do not do this at home. The rafters were further screwed onto these walls to assure no movement in the following years. Oh, and I filled this empty spot at the back by cutting a pallet in half for it. The theme for my roof preparation was basically me trying to not only connect all the pallets once again from above to remove unnecessary movement, but also to create an incline to have the rainwater flow off the roof instead of stagnating. After those planks were in, it was time to put the roof on. I actually got new and fresh roofing for this, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Minus €135. It will last a lifetime though probably, so a necessary investment. A lot of preparation and careful thinking later, I started pre-drilling holes just for the sake of convenience and finished with Tex screws. Whilst the gradient wasn't the steepest, it passed my water test. Water flows, test passed. I still had to install a door though. Nothing too special apart from fine-tuning the upper edges to have it really fit the already existing enclosure. And there it was, a new building for my birds. There were still a few holes that were too big for my taste, so I worked on putting wood over those. Probably should have taken off the fish eye lens for this part, to be honest, makes my ass look way too big. I also made sure that the door was properly shut. And of course, to make sure it was properly shut, I had to check it from the outside as well. To do that, I had to elegantly crawl through the bird exit twice. The house itself was at this point nothing but a big tall box, and since my birds were not necessarily 2 meters in size, I needed to make better use of the space. For this, I cut up a bunch of wood to serve as legs, and then put a palletwood without 2 wide gaps on top of it. It wasn't the best, but it would do its job. Chickens are also a thing that I was thinking of having again, so I obviously had to install some rafters for them as well. Apart from that, I finally installed a door for them, with little wooden mechanisms to keep it shut or open. The problem with the table in there would undoubtedly lead to birds laying eggs in the very corner under it, which would have me bent over face down in the poop of my birds trying to get the eggs out of there. To combat this, I installed an egg door. This way I would conveniently be able to reach the underside of the table. The stage was set, and it was time for some straw on enclosure action. You might have noticed that I didn't have any fence around this new house yet, which you are very much correct on. The reason being that I swallowed my pride and finally got electric netting. I wanted to be absolutely sure that this time my chickens would be safe. This way I could protect them from daylight attacks as well. It was still quite the effort trying to set this one up alone, lots of back and forth while fighting with the netting. I observed the behavior of the ducks interacting with the new fence for a month, and I deemed it okay to proceed with setting it under voltage. Yes, they got shocked here and there, but unlike goats, their first instinct isn't to dive headfirst into whatever just shocked them, but to actually go to the other way and alarm everyone in the vicinity that the electric fence is not to be trifled with. Okay, real talk here. I've been sitting here on this script trying to close out this video in a highly professional manner. But to be honest, I can't think of a way, so I'm just gonna describe it really plain. Everyone good with that? Yes? Good for you. Okay, here we go. I sold all of my new ducks except for 3 drakes. I housed those in the new house. All my other ducks are free roaming since there was hardly any grass left in their fenced off area. Don't worry, I barricaded the area towards the street so they don't get driven over. In January I got some new chickens, Benoit, the rooster, and 4 girls with him. They've been very good birds, going inside every night and giving me eggs regularly. The 3 drakes are being as annoying as you'd expect young adolescent ducks to be, having me chase them in almost every night. But it's been getting better. I now only require 3 rounds around the new house on average to get them all in. That's it. I think I'm done. Subscribe if you want to, or don't. I can't force you. Have a nice day. Okay, bye!
What did you guys do? Hello. What you doing? Laying an egg? Good on you. Don't mind me, just gonna close this again. Good boy.